We are now live on the internet.
Hey, internet.
Let me just check that down. Yeah. So, hey everybody, Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live with, what time is it? It's like
9:20 a.m.
9:20, and it's 5:20 p.m. here on the East Coast. Go the good old USA.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's Chris Hocking from Command Post.
Hey guys.
So, Command Post is now officially out of beta.
It is. Yep. We decided to get rid of the beta label. We had, I think we've, over 3,000 active monthly users. So we figured with that many people using it every single day and no death threats, it's safe to release it into the world without the beta label.
That was a criteria for you to release it?
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of, there's never, it's never going to be finished. You're never going to fix every bug. It's always going to be evolving and changing, and we're always going to be adding new stuff. So yeah, it was sort of just deciding at what point we'd do it, and it seemed like a good time to do it. And yeah, so we just did it one day.
Well, that's fantastic. So it's been how many years now?
I think it's been about 3, maybe.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a fun little side project. Keep me entertained.
It's more than a side project, isn't it? I mean, as far as you're concerned, it is, but in reality, it's taken a lot of resources, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of hours, and it's not just me doing it. My coding partner in crime, David, he obviously spends a lot of time on it as well. So yeah, it's definitely, a lot of late nights and a lot of fun tinkering and experimenting. So yeah, it's been good.
So how many iterations have you had? I've 70 some, has it been, or beta 70?
No, I think we got up into the 90s. I think
90s.
I can't remember what we ended up with, but yeah, it was originally Final Cut Hacks. I think we did 70 odd versions of that, and then we changed the name and sort of rebranded and redesigned it a bit with Command Post, and then 90 or so betas later, it is now released for free.
So, did you have, what are some of your favorite features that people that like about Command Post? Of course, I know what mine is.
Sorry, you froze there.
Oh, I said, what are some of the favorite features that people have liked? Do they have like a top 10?
Yeah, lots of people like different things. So in more recent releases, we added support for the Loop Deck Plus control surface. And we had a lot of users sort of start using Command Post just to use that, because the native Loop Deck application's a bit clunky to sort of use. And it's really great for like Lightroom and things like that. For the Final Cut community, they were just like, it's a bit hard to set up and things like that. So we've had a lot of users sort of jump onto Command Post because of that. The other feature that a lot of people jump to Command Post to use is our search feature in the HUD. So it basically allows you to search any column in the browser in Final Cut Pro. So this is really good if you've got transcription in the notes column and you want to search for individual, say for instance, you've got one clip that has 1 million markers all with individual notes on it. For the transcription, you can sort of search and it will actually go to that individual marker.
Those are fantastic things. Why? You're doing it through accessibility, if I recall correctly, somehow?
Yeah. So both those features, basically to control Final Cut Pro, we sort of control it through the accessibility framework.
And they can't do that themselves. That wouldn't be something they would do.
Loop Deck. Yeah, Loop Deck actually do control Final Cut through they basically use the same techniques that we do.
Really?
Yeah, but it's such a lot of work, and we have 3 years head start on them.
There you go.
Yeah, so lots of things, all the pain that we've gone through, for example, multiple languages, different regions using a full stop instead of a comma, maths, number separators. There's a whole lot of weird language quirks where, like, the Final Cut team have, for like example, in Japanese, there's some menu items that accidentally have like a space at the end of the name. So instead of saying like edit, it's actually edit with a space at the end. So there's heaps of like little workarounds and stuff that we've had to sort of fault find over the years. So we've corrected a lot of those things ourselves. So for someone like Loot Deck to come in and start from scratch, they need to have lots of users so they can sort of test it in all the different languages, work out all those problems and limitations, and sort of find their own solutions for that.
Right, right. So you don't have any direct contact with Apple, right?
No. I mean, I know people at Apple that I met through, like, when we went to the NAB earlier in the year. So,
right.
And I know people through the various Facebook communities and developers that weren't at Apple and now are at Apple. But yeah, I don't have a direct line to Apple or any means of getting support quickly.
So you don't even have a developer's account, or do you?
Yes. So I've got a developer's account because we need to now we're in a world where everything needs to be co-signed and notarized.
Right.
You basically, to basically run Mac software on Catalina, you need to pay Apple money now, because there is no way to run it without having that app notarized. Oh. So every person will have to sign up to be a developer if they want to notarize an app in Catalina.
So what did you think of the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit from the outside? I'm always curious what people think from the outside.
Yeah, well, obviously I wasn't there. I was at home watching your many live streams and watching the Twitter feeds and stuff like that. I was very jealous that I couldn't get over there, because I would have loved to just hang out with all those familiar faces. But it's just so much money to go over there for what essentially seems like a party hanging out with a bunch of other nerdy friends.
Well, let me tell you something that I was sitting next to someone, and they were pitching you for next year.
Well, I would love to come next year. If someone wants to, I actually tried a couple of times to put myself forward as a speaker at the summit, but weren't able to sort of make that work. But if they want to bring me next year, I'm more than happy to come along.
Yeah, that'd be great to get you out here.
I will talk about anything.
So from the out,
a lot of other Australians that sort of come over, Ian and Lee, and
Lee's been over and Ian, both for the last 2 years. Ian's been over, I think, every time I've been there. I've been there this is my fourth one, this Creative Summit, and each one's a little different. Each one's a different group of people, different speakers, different things that Apple's talking about. This time was the first time of the three that Apple didn't have any announcement of Final Cut Pro to the public around the event, because the last three they've had, they did 10.3 at the summit the day before. They did 10.4 at the summit. The day of the summit, they did 10.4. They actually announced it when we were in the Apple presentation. And then last year, not this last one, but the year ago, they did 10.4.4 at the summit as well. This year they didn't do that, so they broke the pattern. Now, they did introduce 10.4.7 right 1 month before the summit, so that kind of was a little bit of a hint that perhaps they're not going to do anything at the summit per se. But I keep telling people, 2019's not over yet.
I would be very surprised to see a Final Cut update.
Well, but don't you think with the Mac Pro they might do something?
I don't think so, because that was the big selling point of 10.4.7. Like, they had in the release notes that this release is for the Mac Pro.
But that also was 10.4.7. So why do you think they did Metal 2 update in 10.4.7 and not save it for 10.5?
Well, they had to, because they needed to do that to make it work on Catalina.
But I mean, why couldn't... It seems to me that the Metal update is a huge, huge update.
Yeah.
You would think they would have incorporated that, I mean, from a marketing standpoint, something that big in a big update rather than just a point update. That's my point. So they instead of doing 10.4.7, they would have done 10.5 at that point, I guess.
I guess they just didn't have enough time to change all the underlying frameworks and add a bunch of features.
Okay.
Like I imagine by changing like the architecture underneath, like I imagine it's like a massive undertaking, because not only are you replacing all this legacy code, all this OpenGL code with Metal code, but you've got to then test it all, make sure that the project, for example, I updated from 10.4.6 to 10.4.7 in the middle of a big project, fast deadlines, crazy turnarounds.
Right.
And I'm confident to do that because I had 10.4.6, and I'm happy if something breaks, I'm happy to go in and spend a few hours fixing it or opening up the library and reverse engineering things and doing that kind of stuff. But the fact that I could do that mid-project and literally it didn't impact anything in the slightest, the renders were exactly the same, the library migrated perfectly, like that's such a massive QC undertaking. The fact that they can literally change the whole underworkings of their application, and yet it didn't affect performance. There was no new, I haven't seen any sort of new bugs or issues that were different from 10.4.6. And the fact that the output, even though the underlying rendering engine is completely different, the fact that the colors look the same or the color effects work the same way, like I think it's easy to think that they literally just like took out a module and put a new module in, but the fact that they had to test that, make sure it all worked and make sure it was all perfect, like I think that's a massive thing.
Well, yeah, it obviously is. I mean, to me, not even being a programmer or anything, doing something like the Metal update seems massive. I guess that makes sense, and it's just the fact that that 10.5 wasn't ready, and they had to have 10, something out with the Metal 2 update. But they did. When did they start with Metal 1 in Final Cut? It's been a while, right?
When Metal was announced, and I would need to Google all these dates, but when Metal was announced at WWDC, I think a later Final Cut release, they started using it for some things. So for like the all the stabilization stuff, that started using Metal, and sort of individual features, or the what's it called, the flow transition, whatever that's called.
Right, Flow. I think it's called Flow.
Yeah, like that used Metal, and they sort of had little sections that they started porting over to Metal. A lot of the old shake code, I think. But yeah, then they basically did it in baby steps, and then this last release, they've done a huge chunk of it, and most of the motion engine now all runs on Metal 2.
Oh, it does?
It's in Final Cut Pro that are still running on OpenGL, so it's not like completely Metal across the board. They still have work to do whenever OpenGL becomes completely gone.
Okay.
And we don't really know when that's going to happen, but it seems like Apple's trying to get rid of it as quickly as possible.
And so that will happen over a period of months or years, do you think?
They trying to think dates, but I think they sort of depreciated it last year, 2018. They said they're going to get rid of it in a future macOS release. I think it took them 5 years to fully get rid of QuickTime. So I imagine we've probably got another few years before OpenGL completely disappears, unless they come out with their own GPUs in their own Mac hardware, which could happen at any time.
You think that would be beneficial?
If they built their own GPUs?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look at like the iPhones or the iPad Pro, like it's crazy powerful. And the fact that it's so tiny, like imagine if you just took the whatever crazy chips they've got in their iPad Pros, and rather than having one of those chips, you get 10 chips because you've got so much more space in a MacBook Pro. You could create crazy GPU processing. And the fact that they control the operating system and all the underlying Metal framework as well, they can do stuff that, they could do smart things where they spread it over multiple GPUs really efficiently and could do crazy amounts of stuff. So I'm sure eventually Apple will do their own chips in the Macs. It's just a matter of when. So
do you think they could do it better than Intel? I guess that's my point.
I think they definitely, because they control, like the Intel chips are trying to target a lot of different architectures and they're trying to keep a lot of customers happy. Whereas Apple can go, we only want to do the things that Mac OS cares about. So we can get rid of all this legacy stuff, and they can just concentrate on metal performance and whatever technologies they really care about. And they're sort of doing that where they've got all the new chips in the MacBook Pros where they're sort of offloading stuff to their own chips to do specific tasks. So I think eventually maybe it's not one GPU chip. Maybe they've got like literally we have a chip that it just handles like encoding and processing for ProRes and all the codecs that we love and support. So yeah, I think eventually we'll see some, and I don't think it'll happen quick. Like nothing with Apple ever happens quickly. Like you hear rumors and then 10 years later you'll see it all come to play.
Right, that's exactly what happens.
I reckon in the next 5 to 7 years we'll definitely see Apple sort of doing their own hardware, their own chips in the MacBook Pros and Mac Pros, and yeah.
So I mentioned that somebody was pushing for you to come to the next Final Cut Pro Creative Summit. There's no reason why I can't tell you. It was Roger Bolton.
Ah, Roger. Yeah, I love Roger.
Yeah. He was saying, get Chris Hocking up here. So we'll see what happens next year. Yeah. So
I would love to come to the summit.
What about NAB? You planning on that? You said maybe?
Yeah, that's a maybe. I think it's just so far away and it's hard to justify the expense.
Yep.
Because you're not going to generate, we don't make any money off Command Post really.
Right.
And it's not going to generate my production company any work by going to NAB. So it's just a hard thing to justify going across because it really is for us just a social gathering really. But having said that, if Faster Together runs again and Tangent want to do another booth, I will definitely be there promoting Tangent panels and Command Post and Final Cut Pro.
So that's interesting you brought that up. So I don't think there's going to be a Faster Together thing because there's going to be a Super Meet this year.
Right.
They've announced, but not with Mike Horton, just Dan Berube and FMC have teamed up, and they are doing the Super Meet again on the Tuesday night. They've already pre-announced that. So there probably won't be a Faster Together stage like that. If there's anything, if LumaForge or anybody else teams up and does anything, I presume it'll be more on the show floor like they did before. Maybe something like Frame.io did this last year. Frame.io did a great job last year.
Yeah, Frame.io booth was amazing.
That's the only place that really had a place for Final Cut Pro people to congregate.
Yeah, but that could still be at the Super Meet. Like I went to the Super Meet a few years ago, LumaForge had their little desks in the foyer of the Super Meet, and there were lots of other Final Cut people around. So yeah, maybe it would be maybe Tangent and Command Post will come to the Super Meet.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because exactly. It would be a Super Meet now. They have the foyer, exactly the same setup. Everybody hangs out in the foyer, with food and stuff, and before the actual Super Meet. So absolutely, they could do that. I'm just saying that the last 3 NABs, LumaForge has done 2 Faster Together stages, and then the one last year they did this Faster Together combo Super Meet big event. Yeah. But the ones before that, they actually did events, one across the street from the NAB, and then one the year before that, it was at the NAB just at the end of the show floor, which I like that because they had a lot of presenters, not just Final Cut Pro presenters.
Yeah.
They had a lot of people there. So
Who knows? Now that Sam's sort of doing a lot more community stuff and stuff like that, who knows? Every year he seems to do something bigger and better and more epic. So who knows what crazy scheme he'll come up with next year. And
then also this year at NAB, it's starting on Saturday night.
Yeah. Yeah, so that'll be interesting.
So the actual first, like last year's Sunday night was Future Media Concepts had events during the day. Then he had a big party at night. And then Monday morning was the big event with Blackmagic announcement and stuff. So I don't know, is Blackmagic going to announce on Sunday morning this time? It seems like an odd... But here's one of the reasons why I'm asking that, because I think it starts at 12 noon on Sunday. I think. So I wonder if they're going to do their big announcement on Sunday or wait till Monday at 10. I don't know. Who the heck knows?
I guess I'll have to do it before the show floor opens. Otherwise, everyone will see what they're gonna announce.
Well,
So,
then that's true. So it'll probably have to be Sunday then. But I'm pretty sure it's starting later, not 10 o'clock or whenever time it started before.
Yeah, right.
I'm always excited to see what they have.
Maybe they'll do it 9 a.m. on the Sunday and then straight into the main event.
So you got something else going on too. You just have a new TV series or two?
Yeah, we've wrapped 2 sort of TV projects. We did full post, all in Final Cut of a Neighbours spin-off series called Erinsborough High. So Neighbours is like I think it's Australia's longest running soapy in Australia. And it's been, lots of amazing celebrities have come out of Neighbours. A lot of our most famous Australian actors were all started on Neighbours. But it's really, the main audience is in the UK. Like the people in the UK love Neighbours. So that's sort of where the main audience is for this sort of spin-off series. But yeah, it's sort of a spin-off. It's 5 half-hour episodes all set around the high school. So it's sort of geared towards a younger audience.
Right. So is that play on BBC in England, on the UK?
I think it's Channel 5. I think it's on, Channel 5.
Okay. I remember the first time I was over in the UK, they didn't have very much TV in those days. And one of the things they had was like watching people play golf. But not a tournament, just like an hour or 2 hours, just some guy or 2 guys golfing on the golf course. I said, wow, that's a little different. I'm sure everything's changed.
Yeah. Well, I think, BBC's obviously they're a massive national broadcaster, and they've got lots of channels and lots of radio, and they're doing really good stuff in the online space as well. And BBC is very innovative in terms of they've always sort of been at the forefront of sort of open source software for the film and TV community, and they're always trying to push boundaries. And obviously there's a lot of BBC sort of divisions that are using Final Cut, which is really cool.
Oh, absolutely. We're one of the things, I guess I can't talk about that. So Apple always tells us that they read all the emails and stuff. That's public knowledge. Mm-hmm. That was reiterated at this Creative Summit. Yeah. And one of the other things that was reiterated, I won't say where, was Apple is involved with, they use their resources for Final Cut Pro across all the different fields, across education, across whatever, just general editors and other fields like Hollywood and TV. They use appropriate resources for each one to promote Final Cut Pro in those different fields. They're not ignoring any field, but they dedicate resources based on what they think is appropriate, the amount of resources that they do. But it seems like Europe and the UK and Australia, I know more Final Cut Pro editors in Australia than any other country overseas.
It's interesting.
So many that I had to do 2 Final Cut Pro Radio TV lives because you guys couldn't fit on one. Remember? Yeah. It's like crazy. I know 10 people over there, or 8 to 10 people specifically in the Final Cut Pro community over there, and yet it's not dominant in as far as TV and film, right? It's still Avid over there.
Yeah. Most of like in commercial world, the big commercial houses are all Avid, pretty much. Most of the reality TV and all that kind of stuff's all Avid still. That's Final Cut's definitely not an industry standard in Australia.
Yeah, but yet you guys are pretty vocal from over there.
Yeah, we're just loud and annoying, and I also think we have, because a lot of our big post houses have all closed down. There's a lot more people. There's a lot more sort of smaller boutique post houses, a lot more freelancers, and a lot more producers willing to sort of just let editors use whatever tool they want to get the job done, because budgets are shrinking and Yeah, we don't have like you look back 10 years ago, we had massive post houses with hundreds and hundreds of employees. And in Melbourne, I don't think like there's a couple of big sound houses that do lots of Hollywood stuff, but all the actual big irons where they had like 4 Flames and 4 Smokes and Resolve Suites and Telecine and stuff like that, like they
Right.
don't exist anymore. All those big sort of companies, all like they all basically folded into the big deluxe multinational organization, and then deluxe is now bust. So um yeah, all those sort of big iron post houses, they don't really exist. Or even our big VFX things, we had Allura, which did all big Hollywood stuff, that sort of got folded into Method, and our Method sort of part of the deluxe group, and that's sort of in trouble, financial trouble as well. So yeah, the industry has changed a lot in the last 10 years.
So I've seen a lot of TV shows coming out of Australia, from Netflix specifically, like The Leftovers.
Yeah.
That was,
Yeah.
I'm a big Damon Lindelof fan, so I was really, the last season was filmed in Australia.
Yep. So that was filmed in our hometown, Melbourne, at Docklands Film Studios.
Wow.
But yeah, I wouldn't call that an Australian production. I think they sort of just made use of our awesome studios.
Okay.
It was still a, overseas-based thing. But yeah, we've got a couple of Netflix, Australian Netflix shows happening. It's sort of, it's an interesting time where obviously the government sort of trying to work out, because we have restrictions and rules around our TV broadcasters where they have to produce Australian content. And
Okay.
obviously a lot of those TV stations are struggling because everyone's watching. No one watches terrestrial TV anymore. It's all Netflix, and Amazon, and Disney Plus, and Apple Plus, and all the things, all the streaming services. So obviously there's a big push for Netflix to fund Australian content.
Okay. Okay.
And they are like, we recently had the Screen Producers conference, and Netflix was a top tier sponsor. They sponsored the awards nights. There was Netflix branding everywhere. So they are actively, and they've just set up an office in Sydney. So Netflix are sort of actively in Australia, which is exciting and good.
Yeah, before Apple TV came out, I was saying, I've said it a couple of times, that I didn't think they could compete with Netflix and Amazon Prime and HBO on the edgier shows that they have out. And then this morning I see this TV show, or I guess it's a movie from M. Shyamalan.
Yeah.
It looks creepy as hell. It gave me chills when I saw it. I said, way to go, Apple. Because I didn't think they were going to do stuff that's that edgy, but that show really looks good. I guess it's a movie. It looks really, really good. It's called Servant. So I'm very, very pleased with the fact that is something that Apple is doing, because that gives me, now they're not going to just be like, Disney, which is fine. That's one segment. But some of the stuff on HBO and Amazon and Amazon Prime is some fantastic, fantastic stuff. It's like they brought Hollywood film and brought it into television, the television market. The quality of the filming is, it's very high quality these days. So
I think having that, I mean, it sort of gives the filmmakers freedom, because they have budgets where they can pretty much do whatever the hell they want.
Right.
So hopefully it fosters. It's sort of like Netflix in the early days, where the producers loved going to Netflix because they had creative freedom and they could make the shows that they actually wanted to make all along. So hopefully it just creates more content and makes more original content. That's sort of what the original creators really wanted to make in the first place.
So what do you think? We're going to see 10.5 surely in 2020, right?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see it next year. Probably around, I would guess, April next year.
NAB?
I reckon NAB around, that seems to be the time frame that they normally do stuff.
It certainly would be interesting. That means they probably will present there again. They didn't present last year. They had nothing to show. I mean, they did the small update in March, and then they had nothing to show, so they didn't show, which is fine. That's fine. If they have nothing to show, then there's no sense in just rehashing things. So what do you think, based on your knowledge, that we'll see in 10.5? What's going to be the big item?
My prediction is that it'll all be about machine learning.
Like what? How would that work with Final Cut?
Well, I think like if you look at like some of the job listings from like 3 years ago, they were all like, we want people in machine learning. So we know that they've hired a bunch of people that are really into that machine learning stuff. We know that one of Apple's big hardware focuses has been on GPUs, and the Mac Pro, obviously you can throw 4 amazing GPUs in. So we've got all this processing power. I think the next logical step is for Apple to really sort of focus on that. So I think it's simple things like metadata, taking some of the technologies from their other sort of iOS things and sort of automatic logging based on faces and people and doing automatic keywords and sort of smile stuff like that. I mean, even in Final Cut currently, if you drag in a sound effect or a music clip, you pretty much have like a 50-50 chance of whether it's going to get the roll right. Like it's so, whatever algorithm they're doing for that, it's pretty rubbish. It very rarely gets it right. And you're like, it's clearly music. Like, surely you know because it's got music. If you drag it from iTunes, it's definitely music because it's got like the music metadata in there, but it's not smart enough to know the difference between a sound effect and a piece of music. So I think that's in terms of like all the stuff that Philip Hodgetts has been saying for 20 years. I think that'll all start to come into play where it's sort of they'll make the browser smarter and they'll allow you to use the metadata that's in the inspector actually in the browser. Because currently, for example, if you're shooting on a Blackmagic camera and you're using the logging screen on the camera and you go, good take, you can see that metadata in the inspector, but you can't use it in the browser. So it's completely useless because you've marked up all the clips on your camera as good takes, but there's no way to filter that in a browser column or a smart collection. So I think that's one aspect. And then the other aspect, I think, will be just making things like automatic color correction, automatic sound fixing. Like I think the Magic Wand button will just be version 2 of the Magic Wand button.
Okay.
So when you do like a match color, rather than doing sort of simple algorithms where it sort of mathematically matches colors, it'll use machine learning and go have a huge database of stuff. They can probably like scan through all of their Apple TV collection, for example, and know, you've done this great on this shot. We'll look through our database or machine learning system of all the different things and apply the grade based on that. And I imagine that they'll do the same for like noise reduction and like rather than having like a ducking thing, it'll be a machine learning driven sort of effect where rather than having a role-based mixer, you just put you just tell obviously the audience will want to hear the dialogue, so we'll automatically adjust the music so that you can hear the dialogue more clearly. So I think that's sort of my prediction of what the next big update will be. It'll be sort of a bunch of tools that probably like the professionals will go, why do we need all this automatic stuff? Like it'll be like the 3D titles all over again where everyone will be like, this is crap. But in reality, when like it's sort of like the boring detector in Resolve. Like everyone just badmouths that and says that is the stupidest thing in the world. But the reality is there are like event editors that are like doing like, say for instance, you're doing like an IBM conference and you've got to do the you've got to cut up all the presentations for like a 3-day conference where people are talking about very complex topics. Like an editor might have to churn out like 10 of them a day on autopilot, and having tools like the boring detector just allows you to sort of like do things quicker and easier. Like it's not just editing's not just about doing art pieces and stuff like that. Like in this modern day and age, there's so many jobs that you just need to bash out quickly. And tools like the boring detector just make your life easier. Sort of like the whole argument of having dupe detection in Final Cut. Like, the reason that's useful is because, say for instance, you're doing a documentary. Like, yes, maybe you would know that it's just hard to remember if you've actually used that shot before, and you don't want to reuse the same shot. And you
No,
can
of
sort of do
course.
it by
Yeah.
looking at the browser and looking at what thing, like, but yeah, just having that visual indicator where you can just go, all right, I can instantly, visually see that I have not used that clip. Or for example, if you're using like the main thing I used dupe detection in Avid for was like working out if I'd use certain sound effects and dragging out durations just to see what was used in different sections like that. So yeah, I think in answer to your question, the next release I think will all be about machine learning.
What
That is my prediction.
do you think they're going to throw any bones to Hollywood?
Well, I think the thing is that all these sort of tools will help Hollywood because
Right.
everyone wants to edit things. Like the major selling point of Final Cut is that it allows you to do things faster, allows you to iterate faster, which allows you to be more creative. Like I really feel like driving Final Cut is literally like playing a musical instrument. That's what I loved about Autodesk Flame is that you literally had your giant tablet, you're like smashing it, you feel like an artist, you feel like a painter because you're just throwing things around. And Final Cut allows you to do that. And I think rather than saying like Hollywood we don't need like native AAF support in Final Cut Pro to make it more Hollywood friendly. And even all the collaboration stuff, like you can sort of get around that. Like what makes Final Cut awesome for everyone is that you can do things so quickly. It's so much creative freedom. And I think that's the big selling point for Hollywood is like you got to prove the case that it'll actually save you money because you and end up with a better result because you can do things faster. I don't think we can ever compete with Final Cut Pro can never compete with Avid Media Composer or Premiere in terms of like Hollywood features, because if you look at like the latest Avid Media Composer releases, like one of the like big features is like we add a text file which has all the information about an AAF export. Like that's their big selling point is you get a report as a CSV file when you export AAFs. And Apple's never going to do that because most of their users don't know what a CSV file is, let alone what an AAF is.
Right, exactly.
So it's sort of, I think it's, working out what the selling point is. Like we can't sell Final Cut by saying it can compete. It's a completely different beast to an Avid Media Composer and a Premiere. And the benefit is that you can do things a lot faster, easier.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a comment. OGDC says, if Dolby Vision is implemented in that Final Cut Pro, that would be a plus.
And I'm sure like that's the sort of thing that like Apple loves to add because it's like adding all the 360 stuff. I would imagine that there are very few users that use Final Cut Pro with 360 video, but the 6 people that do probably love like makes their life so much easier. And the same with Dolby Vision, even the HDR stuff. Like today, there are very few. If you look out of 3 million Final Cut users, I would imagine there's like 1,000 of them that actually are delivering in HDR. And those people are probably delivering to Netflix or stuff like that. But it's important for Apple to add all those high tech things because it's sort of, their phones now can do Dolby Vision and Dolby Sound and stuff like that. So it's sort of, keeping in with that sort of, they love pushing the bar forward in terms of that.
So you sent me a coupon for, what is it for? Brett FX?
When we did, Brett FX, when we did Neighbours E-High, one of the big components of the show was a lot of the characters communicate with text messages. So rather than us building our own sort of text message thing, we sort of tried out all the ones that were out there, and there's a lot. Motion VFX makes one. Pretty much every big plugin maker makes their own ones. But the Brett FX one was like 90% what we sort of needed. We needed it to look as close to what an Apple, a real text message sort of looks like to keep Apple happy. So we contacted Brett, made some feature requests, and he did a couple of iterations of his plugin. We ended up using it on the show.
So the code is EHIGH.
Yep. E-High, all capitals, all
There
one
you
word.
go. Yeah, E-High. Let me put that up there. Use the code E-High and you get 25% off message to plugin until the end of November because of you guys. That is very cool.
And it's a great plugin. I mean, everyone has to sort of, I'm sure anyone doing corporate videos or advertising, I'm sure there's lots of projects where you need to do text messages on the screen.
Yes.
So yeah, Brett's one does a really good job. And we literally tried them all. And there's pros and cons for all of them. Like some of them have really good motion tracking. Obviously the motion VFX stuff have really good motion tracking. But yeah, we found that Brett's one it could allow us to do the best look of what we needed to achieve.
Yeah, I had the version 1 and I got the version 2 for free, so updated. So
yeah,
I do like
and
it.
Brett's great.
Yeah, I have a lot of his plugins. I do like it when plugin manufacturers give you the update for included. Ripple's done that multiple times.
I've never really used Brett's plugins before this one. Like I sort of saw them around, but like most of our plugins are from Motion VFX or like a lot of FX Factor and stuff like that. But yeah, having a look at Brett's stuff, it's it's really great.
It's brettfx.com, right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, it looks like it, yeah. So use the code EHIGH and you get 25% off message to plugin, which is very cool. Now I have a tip for people for a coupon. If you want to get a set of these, the AirPods Pro, they're on Amazon right now for $234. That's part of the tip, okay? The other part of the tip, if in America, if you use your Discover card and register it on Amazon.com, you get an additional 5% off.
Excellent.
So if you have to register before you buy, Discover.com and register it, there's something you check off that you accept the 5% on anything on Amazon. So not only are they $234, but you get 5% additional on top of that. So I bought them because of that. I've been using them. So I have both. I have two pair, the first pair and then this pair right now.
Yeah, excellent.
So that's another tip. Look at that. You could save money by watching the show.
Woohoo!
So
Everyone wins.
Where can people watch your TV show? Can they watch it outside of the UK and Australia?
That is a very good question. I don't know the answer to that. I know you can definitely watch it in Australia and you can definitely watch it in the UK. I have no idea what kinds of restrictions there are for the rest of the world. But yeah, at the bottom of I think in that FXP.co article, there is links to, or at least explanations of where they are. So yeah, maybe just try the Channel 10, or I think it's called Peach in Australia, Channel. Get there. But yeah, I'm sure it'll end up on all the popular streaming platforms at some point. But yeah, I'm not really sure of what the deals are.
Did you do any cameos in this one?
No, just post.
Just post.
Yeah.
And you insisted on using Final Cut for this.
Yeah. I mean, we sort of originally they got in contact with us. Like we've had sort of a long-standing relationship with the show because one of our director, writer, producers actually wrote the first episode of this spin-off.
Okay.
And also one of our directors has done work on Neighbours. He literally just finished directing one of the blocks of the main show. But they originally got in contact with us just to do visual effects and sort of finishing because they love what we did on our Wizard show.
Okay.
And chatting to them, we were just like, look, we can probably bundle this up a lot better if we just take everything. It'll be a lot easier for us if we do the editing as well, rather than getting things from Avid and having to send things back and forth. Like, we'll just, what's your budget? What are you paying yourself? Because they have, like, Neighbours spins off. They do, you have to read the article to get the right numbers, but they do basically an episode a day of their main show. So their post team are flat out. So yeah, it was just a way, we sort of proposed this idea and a bit of back and forth and a bit of internal discussions, because obviously it's a big change for them, because they've got having done the show for I think 30 years or whatever it is, they obviously have very strict procedures and a way of doing things, and we're completely changing everything that they've done.
Good. Good.
But yeah, the producers were awesome and happy for us to experiment and try a new workflow, and yeah, luckily it all worked very well.
So do you think that they'll be more open then for people using Final Cut in the future because of you guys?
Definitely. I think it just comes down to the team. I don't think they really know or care what software we use. It's more as long as the files they get at the end of the day pass QC and the end product's good and the story is good, they don't really care what the tools are. Like, we could have easily done it in anything as long as the end result was the same, and as long as the director had a good experience editing with us. I think that was sort of the main thing.
So people can get commandpost.io, right?
Yep, commandpost.io.
And
we're now trialing.
Can we give you money somehow?
Yes, we love money.
So how do they do that? On the site?
Yeah, on the site there's now a sponsors section. And what we've done is we've teamed up with GitHub, who are GitHub's like a social and community of developers, basically. It's where like most open source projects sort of live. And GitHub's doing this really cool thing where they're sort of doing the Patreon sort of model where you can sponsor individual developers or projects. But for the next 12 months, they're sort of doing something where they're match funding any donations to individual developers. So if you sponsor myself or David, they will match fund whatever. So you give $1 a month, they'll give us an extra $1 a month. We did run into a thing where, to prevent fraud and stuff like that, if you're signing up for GitHub and sponsoring straight away, there's some restrictions on that, because they're like, well, obviously we're giving away free money. You could just sign up yourself and give money. So you might get a warning message saying that they won't match fund if you've literally just signed up to GitHub.
Right.
Manpost is the only thing that you're donating to. But if you've had lots of people have GitHub's accounts. So if you've had a GitHub subscription or GitHub account for years, then yeah, you won't have any problem with the match funding.
And people can follow you on Twitter at Late Night NITE Films. Mm-hmm. Right? And do you talk about Command Post on there?
Yeah, I just talk about filmmaking in general, post production, geeky Final Cut stuff. So yeah, you can tweet me and ask me Final Cut stuff or Command Post stuff. We also have a very active Command Post Facebook group, so you can jump in there and ask any questions.
Just search for Command Post.
Yeah, if you just go to the website commandpost.io, there's a button at the top to the Facebook group.
Excellent. So now you're just starting your workday, right?
Lots of ways to get in touch.
You're just starting your workday.
Yeah, it's 10 a.m. Yeah, 10 a.m. No one's in the office yet. It's a bit, I don't know how long I'll last today. It's 39 in Melbourne, 39 degrees Celsius, and very sort of extreme fire dangers. I don't know if anyone's been catching on the mainstream news. The top half of our country is all on fire. And now, now Melbourne's sort of getting that sort of heat wave. And because we've had been in out and very dry, it's...
is that usual, like a season, fire season?
The summer's always really bad, but it's sort of come a lot earlier, and because of global warming and droughts and stuff like that, it's obviously a lot more impactful. Like the fires in New South Wales have been horrendously bad. And as someone who lives literally my neighbour's house, national park, forest, it's a little bit scary.
Absolutely.
If the forest is on fire, there is no escape.
They on Twitter, they had that poor little koala bear that was caught in the fire, and some woman ran and rescued it, took off her shirt and rescued the poor little thing. I hope it makes it. They said it was in very serious condition, but so far I think it's survived. Yeah.
But that's the crazy thing about all these fires is the amount of damage it does just to the wildlife, and scary stuff.
Yeah. not pleasant. But anyway, we've had the last 2 Creative Summits. They've had the fires in California, same time of the year. We this year we weren't affected as much, but 2 years ago it was smoky there. So
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we're. Anything else you want to talk about while we got you on here? I've been trying to get you on for a while. We talked last week about scheduling, and today it worked out that we got you on. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly. I don't think there's anything, unless anyone has any questions for me. I think we also just wrapped up we did a initiative for ABC Kids for a disability awareness project. So we sort of it's basically a pilot for a TV show.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Where we had our director was in a wheelchair and our main cast were in wheelchairs. And the show is about kids in wheelchairs. So obviously, like the logistics of doing something like that, and we had like stunts and downhill wheelchair races and just like the complexity of having to have accessible toilets everywhere and making sure that you do everything safely with young kids and wheelchairs and stunts and stuff like that. And so that was a crazy adventure, but yeah, very worthwhile. And just little things like our office is upstairs, so our director couldn't actually come in our building because couldn't physically get up to our office because we're on the second floor. So just having to relocate our edit suite for posts and stuff like that. So that was a really good learning experience for all of us, and will make us more aware in future projects how just how to be more accessible and stuff like that.
I worked in the 90s, in the 80s, I worked as a carpenter in Washington. And I'll never forget, there was one house museum, I think it might have been the Alexander Graham Bell Museum, that they put an elevator in, just a 2-story, but they put a small elevator in, and it cost $10,000 a floor for that elevator. Right. $10,000 a floor, and that was back a long time ago. So I can't imagine what it costs now. But it was a tiniest little elevator. The cutest little thing. It was good for us because we could get our tools upstairs. Just wheel them in and take them up the elevator. But I've never seen an elevator in a house like that before. It's like a row house. So
yeah, and you don't realize how unfriendly everything is until you have to. Oh yeah. Deal with people, especially young people in wheelchairs, and we're like and older people in wheelchairs as well that are maybe a bit more frail. Like just the logistics of surely it's easy to find like a location where we can eat lunch, and because we're filming out in like country towns and stuff, and you're like, wait, no, everywhere has a stair or there's so lots of things to think about that you just don't think about.
Because the London tube system is so old, they don't have accessibility in most of the stations. It's all stairs.
Yeah.
They may be updating them now, but when I was there, it's like, wow, in America, all these things are accessible with escalators and or elevators, but they've been around for so long. It's one of the oldest subway systems in the world, so they didn't build them in those days. So I don't know if they've changed, but
you really about it until you need to, which is
absolutely.
But that project was all cut on Final Cut as well, and that was actually graded. We got that graded externally in Resolve, and the sound was done externally. I think he used Logic.
Really?
But yeah, all cut and finished all in Final Cut.
So how is getting Final Cut to Resolve for coloring? How is that? Use FCPX XML for that back and forth?
Yes. Yep. It all works. Yeah, really good. Yeah, we never really have any issues.
Well, that's good.
Generally, like we try to do it ourselves in our office on our machine so that we know that everything relinks, everything's perfectly matched, and then they can literally open up the Resolve project on their machine in their proper, nice color grading suite. But yeah, occasionally like you'll run into issues, but a lot of the time it's just like, generally it's just they're running an older version of Resolve or something and they need to update, or that's pretty much, we generally have no problems getting things to Resolve or Pro Tools with Extra Pro or stuff like that. It's pretty easy to work with us.
Well, that's good. That's good. So we'll see what Blackmagic has up their sleeves for NAB next year. They always have something new. I guess Resolve 17.
Yeah. Or they might just skip it and just resolve. Resolve 22.
I wonder if
That
they'll
would
have a
add
new
it.
camera.
I'm sure they will. And Resolve, Blackmagic's another Melbourne-based. They're just down the road. They do lots of cool stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Another Melbourne. But yeah, I mean, yeah, those guys just move so fast, and I think a lot of the people in our community sort of look at it from like a Hollywood sort of film and TV workflow, whereas the Blackmagic guys all sort of came out in that sort of broadcast engineering world. And if you look at the keyboard and you look at like the boring detector and stuff like that, it's not for the people in Hollywood that are editing narrative stuff. It's for people that are doing like live events in OB trucks where they're
Sure.
spinning out stuff for like Formula One races or like live sports coverage and stuff like that. And if you look at all the stuff Resolve's doing, they're sort of really sort of pushing to take over that world where they control the whole pipeline. They basically, rather than having an OB truck full of millions of dollars of hardware, you can literally have a computer, whether it's Mac, PC, or Linux, running Resolve, and it ties into all their stuff and all their switches and everything. So yeah, very interesting company that are doing pretty amazing stuff.
So speaking of Blackmagic, do you think we're going to get B-roll support in Final Cut Pro?
I don't know the answer to that. I did like corner one of the Blackmagic Raw guys at NAB, and they're like, yeah, we could do it like today if we had access to do it. So they're keen, they're happy to. And the SDK is open. Like I've literally made a Final Cut generator that allows you to bring in Raw into Final Cut. But
Really?
obviously as a generator, it's kind of useless because you can't access it in the browser. So, but it works.
Right.
You could control all, like in the inspector, you could control all the color metadata and change the white balance, stuff like that. So technically it's possible. It's just, I think that Apple probably would have done it sooner if they didn't have to rewrite the whole metal stuff. I reckon that's why they've spent a year not adding a billion new features and probably not adding codec support and stuff like that. And I imagine maybe as part of my predicted machine learning thing, or maybe it's a step in between. Maybe we'll see. I mean, there's been all those not rumors, but FCP.co did the article on the Catalina new Mac Pro bugs with Final Cut and the beeping and stuff like that. So maybe we'll see a point update. But basically what Apple needs to do is build like a RAW inspector. So currently Red codecs, you have the modify button, it opens up the little pop-up and stuff. But really all that metadata should be in the inspector, whether it's a new section within the color tab or a new tab altogether in the inspector.
Yeah, that makes
sense.
sense.
That's probably what they're waiting for, because you need to be able to control those raw controls.
Yes.
It kind of doesn't make sense to build another button like the red one, because the red one just feels like a bit of a workaround. It's like a complete I think that was probably like quick fixing something to make the red stuff just work.
Sure. Now, Red wrote their own.
So I think it's just a timing issue.
Yeah, Red wrote their plugin for Final Cut, raw plugin.
Yes.
So Apple wrote the legacy codec drivers for Avid, and Avid in return is now supporting ProRes RAW in Media Composer. So it doesn't seem like it's that big a deal for Blackmagic and Apple to work together and get this implemented, because there's lots of Blackmagic camera owners, they want to work in Final Cut Pro, period.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just a timing issue. I reckon it's just literally Apple need to fix all the metal stuff. They need to now build a raw inspector. And then once that's done, then they can work with Blackmagic to add that codec support.
Yeah.
And I think they'll probably add RE raw support and other raw support. Like I can't imagine Apple or Blackmagic don't want this to happen. I think it's just a matter of these things take time because, software is hard.
Yeah, it sure is. All right, Chris, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
commandpost.io for Command Post, which is, explain Command Post to people who don't know what it is. We didn't discuss that.
Command Post is like, it's basically giving a bunch of extra automation and helper tools to Final Cut. So basically, anytime there's something that annoys us when we're trying to edit in Final Cut, we basically add a workaround using Command Post. So for example, you can now apply shortcuts to individual effects. So for example, one thing I use every single day is Alex 4D's grow, shrink, smooth, move, and adjustment layers.
Right.
So I can apply shortcut keys to those individual effects and just press them, and then I'll just add in the timeline without having to use my mouse to navigate to things. And then you can also apply it. We support tangent panels, MIDI panels, the MacBook Pro touch bar. So you can assign like individual effects to the touch bar or a tangent panel. We have like a spotlight for Final Cut. So you can literally press the shortcut key. It brings up like a spotlight-like interface, and you can search for any menu item, any effect, and sort of trigger that really quickly.
So speaking of the
there's
touch...
a billion others.
Well, you're scrolling timeline. You got that going.
Yes.
So speaking of the touch bar, why do you think they haven't introduced a touch bar on a regular keyboard yet?
I guess it's just that these things take time. I don't know.
2016.
I mean, it's such...
2016.
Yeah.
It's not a Final Cut Pro thing. It's just I'm kind of surprised that they don't have the touch bar on like the new Mac Pro keyboard. At least they're giving us a keyboard with the new Mac Pro this time. Last time they didn't give us a keyboard or a mouse.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I reckon it's literally just a timing thing again. I think they're probably still trying to work out if the touch bar is a long-term thing or not.
I see. That makes sense.
I think they're still trying to work out, like they obviously only just worked out that, guys, we actually need an escape key. Like it took them however many years to go, oh, wait a second. No, we do need an escape key.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a good lesson to learn before they release a standalone keyboard and go, shit, we should have put an escape key in it.
Well, even if they just give us the fingerprint sensor on the keyboard, because I'm so tired, I'm so used to doing that now rather than typing in a password, at least give us that.
I think, yeah, and I'm sure it'll come eventually. It's just that there's no rush for Apple. They're making shitloads of money. They have a growing user base. They're now getting into, I saw the other day that they're now doing Apple Music for business, so that you can have like Apple Music playing in your shop. So obviously services and subscription is where they're making all their money.
Yeah. Now, if they would do music for producers within Final Cut.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that's an obvious thing that I'm surprised they've never done. Like give us like in-app purchases within Final Cut. Like,
yeah.
It's such an obvious thing to like sell sound effects, sell motion templates, buy FX Factory and bundle and build that into either the App Store or into Final Cut.
Absolutely.
But so many moving pieces. But yeah, I mean, that would obviously make them so much money, but at the same time, and make all our customers' lives easier and kill so many businesses.
Well, just as long as they update Final Cut Pro and keep it efficient, keep it speedy, like we like it, and add new features at the same time. We're not asking too much, are we? Of the team?
Well, I think they've done I think like the last update, like literally, I did not notice, and this is both good and bad, I guess, but I didn't notice a single thing difference between 10.4.6 and 10.4.7 on my MacBook Pro, which is an older 2017, I think, model.
Okay.
But it didn't feel any faster, didn't feel any slower. It was basically exactly the same machine from the day I updated to 10.4.7.
It's interesting. I updated to Mojave and 10.4.7, and I noticed definitely smoother. Even Logic was smoother. I was having an issue with Logic where my mouse was kind of lagging and stuff, and I kept rebooting. Let me update. So I updated to Mojave, and it's better. It absolutely is better. All that stuff went away. So something is you know.
Well, I was already on Mojave, so maybe
Okay.
I'd already had that. And maybe if I update this particular laptop to Catalina, maybe then that'll see a boost that I haven't seen before.
So you're braver than I am.
But yeah,
I'm not doing that. I'm going to stay away
I'm
from
not going to
Catalina.
update to Catalina. But
Yeah.
yeah, Catalina will break too many little things, especially as someone who develops stuff. Like there's so many little tools that I haven't thought about that are probably 32-bit.
Exactly. And what else? And plugins for Logic is another one people are having issues with Catalina. So I won't be touching that for a while, unless I have to.
Yeah.
If I get the Mac
and
Pro.
there's nothing in there that I go, yeah, well, that's the thing. If you get new hardware, then you sort of are forced to update. But there's nothing in Catalina that I go, I definitely need, and it's worth the potential pain of breaking something.
Very good, Chris. I sure appreciate you coming on. Commandpost.io, and on Twitter, it's Late Night Films, NITE Films on Twitter. Stop by and say hi to Chris.
It is.
Thanks.
Thanks, Richard.
Talk to you later.
We'll see you on the internet.